nothing to talk about today.
Yeah, it's going to be a 5-minute show.
We're going to just keep it short, just get through that. The biggest news of the day by far since the last time we talked has been traded to the Gilbert's been traded from the Kings. And wait a second, Vermette slashed a ref, and then maybe Montreal changed.
Let's
get to all of that. We'll get to all that. But today is Wednesday, February 15th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time and fills you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And let's see, other big news. Ilya Bryzgalov will be covering the trade deadline on Sportsnet. How about that?
I think it's ridiculous, but if people are going to watch, who am I to say?
Right. What else? Chimera's penalty shot last night was the worst penalty shot call I've ever seen.
A lot of people have said that. I mean, there's always been bad ones.
I mean,
let's not reveal everything that we're going to talk about in the first 5 seconds. Let's sort of hold it back.
I'm talking about the things that we're going to talk about in 5 seconds, so we can talk about the rest of the show.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what happened to the good old days when a penalty shot? You had to almost kill a person to get a penalty shot. Yeah. Now we've reached the exact opposite of that, where if you touch a guy, he gets a penalty shot. That's
the thing. I mean, I realize that the penalty shot criteria has been loosened up in the shootout age,
to say the least.
But Matt Hunwick didn't do squat to him.
I know.
He didn't hit him on the hands. He didn't slash him.
I know.
He didn't take the stick out of his hands. He waved at his hands, and I think he even missed. I don't even think he made contact. And the referee's arms, the referee or the linesman, whoever it was, the arm goes up, and you look at the replay, and like Chimera was not impeded at all on this penalty shot. It was one of the most, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not biased here, because I would say that even if it was Toronto the opposite way, this was one of the worst calls I have seen ever.
Yeah.
It was a phantom call.
But it didn't affect the game, luckily.
No, it didn't.
It could have. I mean, it was 3-1 at the time, right? But it didn't. You're right. And so let's talk a little bit about. Let's start with the Leafs Islanders game. And we will definitely promise you get to the Montreal news for sure. Because I know many people out there are chomping at the bit to find out what the heck's going on.
Well, and Vermette too. I seem to have touched a nerve on Twitter about Vermette too.
Yeah, we're going to get there's plenty. But let's talk about this. So we talked about yesterday about the Islanders and Leafs having a really serious, and what was honing up to be a real battle between two teams with virtually the same record, both in the playoffs. The Leafs playing not too well, but being in it as of late, but being in a good spot. The Islanders playing very well as of late. They show up and the Leafs just roll them. I mean, in what was, I think, the Leafs' best game of the year, perhaps. I mean, you could say you would know better than me, Mike, but I've watched a lot of Leafs games, but I felt like a lot has to go right for it to be your best game of the year. And I know sometimes you can score 7 goals and it just be like a result of luck or whatever, but I don't think that was the case this time.
It was a solid performance by the team. There's no doubt. I mean, Frederik Andersen played, and he's slumped the last little while, but he played really well, especially in the first period. They got an early goal from Josh Levo, an unexpected source who's played well in the last few games. I was telling Russ before, I think the backbreaker was the Kadri goal in the last 30 seconds of the first period. I thought the Islanders actually outplayed the Leafs or outchanced them. They had to hit a couple posts. There were some good opportunities. They couldn't beat Anderson. And then
Anderson came out to cut down an angle on one that was a really nice one.
Right, and then Kadri's goal, I think, broke their back. And the thing was, they go up 3-0, and then the penalty shot happens, and it goes 3-1. And right after, Tavares gets hooked. It was a retaliatory hook from Kadri, and the Islanders get a power play. And even though in the second period they were outplayed, the Islanders had a chance to climb back into that game. But the problem is, and you look at the Islanders' record on the road, it's pitiful.
Yeah.
And it really, what happened last night, after they didn't score on that power play, and they really didn't get a good chance on it, I think the Islanders just said, we're not going to win this game, and they folded in the third period completely.
Yeah, I brought it up yesterday. They've been a horrible road team with the exception of that Flyers win recently where the Flyers, I just felt like played a bad enough game to let the Islanders be in it and win. And this one was unfortunately what the Islanders do on the road, but even worse than usual. And the Leafs outworked them. I mean, there was a play when Matthews scored his 27th goal. He was at center ice. It was along the wall, and I don't remember who was quote unquote battling him for the puck. And it might have been Alan Quine. It was somebody like that, and he took it from him like it was like a candy from a baby. Went in, did a give and go. Got the easiest goal. Like it was like butter. It was just, and at that point, that's when you do have to wonder again. They put all their eggs in the Thomas Greiss basket. How is that actually going to work out?
And it's ironic right now, right? Because they're sitting there and Halak is just killing it, right? So we're sitting there, and and Berube is fine, but I don't think he's a number one goalie in the NHL. Like I
don't think he is either. But he has moments where he looks good.
Moments where he looks good. He's going to be a very, very solid backup in the NHL, and that's good. And you need a solid backup.
If you don't say that, Alan Walsh will tweet you.
Oh, Alan Walsh doesn't follow me. He blocked me on Twitter. I told you the story. He blocked me proactively on Twitter, which is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. Like I got it. I'm on Twitter and I say, "Hey, Alan Walsh is on Twitter," and I go to follow him. Someone just writes it out. Alan Walsh is on Twitter. I go to follow him, and he only has at that point 25 followers, and I've been blocked proactively. I hold that as a badge of honor. So anyway, yes.
I should do that, like people who I think are going to have a next born or something.
Yeah.
They should have a button where you could proactively block their next of kin.
Proactively, I'm sure my wife, who's on Twitter, he wouldn't even know who she is on Twitter. I'm sure she's been blocked by Alan Walsh too, because
Twitter does have the ability to block certain name. Like if you enter in a name, you can block it. So I've already done that for Donald Trump. So. Oh,
good. So Trump's not following you?
No. Anything mentioning Trump from anybody.
Mentioning Trump, that's a great idea.
I don't want to
get rid of the phrase. Yeah,
that's a great idea. So, but let's get on to something actually. In this last thing that we talked about, the thing that's most shocking to me is the fact, that Nazem Kadri has 22 goals. That just and I know we've all talked about the great young players, but and he's not one of the rookies.
No.
But I'm sitting there and I was amazed by that. I'm looking at okay, Wayne Simmons is leading the Flyers in goals.
Mm-hmm.
He got 23 goals. All right, so Kadri, TJ Oshie, Capitals, 23 goals. Draisaitl, who we talked about yesterday, great player, 21 goals.
I'm not as shocked as other people. Like I've always tried to say that Kadri had ability in him, and it was always bad penalties, dumb play that sort of derailed that. Now that he has a coach that's put that under control, he has really harnessed the best qualities of Nazem Kadri, which is what got him drafted in that spot in the first place, if you think about it.
The thing is that what Babcock has done, I mean, he sort of channeled the negative qualities that you were mentioning, Russ, into he went to basically Kadri, says, we can't have you do those dumb things. We want you to be the shutdown guy. We want you to use your antagonistic skill to get underneath the skin of number one center for the other team, like he did against McDavid early in the year. He did it against Tavares to a point yesterday. And, obviously if he's matching minute for minute those number one guys, he's getting close to the most ice time of any center on that team. I mean, Bozak and Matthews get comparable ice time, but the matchup is there. So
he's matching his top guys. He's a -4 only. That's the other thing that is impressive to me. The fact that he's Austin Matthews is a +2. Okay, but Austin Matthews isn't going against the other team's best offensive players.
Sometimes, but most times not.
Usually not, unless that's also the best defensive player. But Nazem Kadri is only a -4, which is astonishing.
And the thing that makes that even more impressive, is the fact that I believe he has 10 power play goals, which he gets no plus from. So.
Can we sit back and say that he may have been the best signing last year? As crazy as we go through this whole thing, it's like when you look at all the players, because they got him for such a cheap rate.
Right. They got him after a year that was questionable, after a year where he was suspended, and there were a few other things, in the recent past. But see, this is the Lou Lamoriello model, and maybe other players will fight against this, but what he did in New Jersey. He got most of his players on economical deals. He went to Riley, he went to Kadri and says, we want to commit to you long term, but we can't give you top dollar. So he gets Riley for $5 million as compared to guys like Seth Jones who make $5.5 and Yandel who made 6.3. He got Kadri at $4.5. That is what he's going to do in the offseason with RFA guys like Hyman and Brown, who have only had 1 year. But he's going to go to Van Riemsdyk in the summer and say, JVR, we want you to stay in Toronto, but we can't give you $6 million. The only guys who are going to get big money going forward are going to be Marner and are going to be Matthews. And
that's where he'll get that Kovalchuk kind of deal out of Lou. And he'll get it in a couple of years. Like Lou will want to lock him up long term because he'll look at him and say, okay, let's get this done. Matthews people will want to get something done, so he has security. And so I expect that to happen within a couple of years. I agree.
But if JVR says, well, if the Leafs offer him, say, $5 million times 5 years, and he's like, okay, well, no, I can sign for 7 someplace. I can get $6 million. Well, you're going to get it somewhere else because that is the operating procedure of the Leafs. Take a little less, take a little longer contract, stay as part of the plan. And if you don't, we understand. But then you're going to be like Scott Niedermayer or Scott Gomez or Bobby Holik in New Jersey.
Don't ever say Bobby Holik again.
I know, but I'm saying you're going to get paid somewhere else is what I'm saying.
Bobby Holik's name should not be mentioned on the show.
Yeah.
All right, there's more shocking, and before we get on to the
actually, there's one little footnote to this.
Go ahead.
So last night I did a little digging, and I saw that the last rookie center to have like over 40 goals, 41 goals was Eric Lindros. Even Sidney Crosby only had 39. Lindros did that in 92, 93. I believe Matthews has a chance at that, and it's pretty incredible because. Again, I don't want to discount Laine. Laine had a hat trick last night. It's fantastic. I think Laine will be right there too, but this guy's playing center. And this guy actually has more impact on a game than Laine does for the most part. And it's just we've really not seen a rookie center like this in over a decade except for Sidney Crosby, like this dominant where now he has gotten over the hump of well, we think he could be, one of the top players in the league. No, now he's one of the top players, and you're almost forgetting he's a rookie.
Yes. Yeah, you are. And the fact that he played probably the first 10 to 15 games on the third or fourth line. And then, and at least, right? I mean,
third line.
Yeah. And so minimum time. And now of course he's not, but obviously.
Well, he's playing with basically the same wingers.
He is, but that's become the first line, right? So
and just so people know, the reason I didn't mention McDavid, he had injuries in his rookie season. Matthews hasn't been injured, so he's going to have a better rookie season to me. There's just no way around it.
The other player I wanted to bring up that shocked me today when I was looking through the top leading goal scorers, Patrick Maroon has 20 goals.
It doesn't shock me anymore because they put him in a position where he is cleaning up the garbage and the crease, and he is good at that. He's a big, strong guy, and they do have a lot of guys that put pucks on net, and they do have a lot of size up front. It doesn't shock me anymore with Maroon.
This comment, and a Flyers fan brought this up to me, and I think this is a great comment, okay, that the Flyers' hatred of the name Patrick. All right, so let's throw this out for a second. Okay. All right, now let's go right. Okay, remember the Flyers have Patrick Sharp.
Right.
They moved Patrick Sharp for nothing, and Patrick Sharp becomes an all-star Canadian, great player, Team Canada. They, of course, lose the ping pong ball thing and lose Patrick Kane when everybody figured they would have him. And then Patrick Maroon, if you remember who he was traded for, you remember?
It doesn't matter. That wasn't why he got traded.
But you remember what? You remember on?
I don't remember the player. No.
Okay, he and David Laliberte.
I remember Laliberte.
Were traded to the Anaheim Ducks in return for Robert Bortson and Danny Savret.
Well,
hey, Danny Savret, he was a good forward masquerading as a defenseman.
Right.
So using your computation here, that means if the Flyers miss the playoffs and win the lottery, they're going to reject Nolan Patrick.
Right.
I think they have no choice but to.
If you put the tinfoil hat on,
and then for him to go on and have a Hall of Fame career like that, it's not just the fact that they what happens to the Patricks that they have is pretty phenomenal.
Can we just market the Flyers tinfoil hat now for the draft?
They also, remember, got Patrick Falloon at the wrong time. They
Come
you know,
on, will you stop?
no, so I'm gonna throw this. I'm trying to remember other Patricks that they've had. Patrick's Eves, right? Was he a Flyer?
No, he was not. No, now you're reaching.
By the way, a rumor I'm going to put out later today. You're going to get it first on the Hockey Buzzcast right now because you're watching. I have heard Patrick Eves tied to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And
he'd be a real solid pickup for them, but I think the cost would be high.
I don't know how high it's going to be. There's another guy another guy with 20 goals. So it's like,
well, I mean,
Patrick Eves, and I think Patrick Eves has always been, and he's in a fascinating story in and of himself. Like that guy has been all over the place. He has been forgotten about.
Hard worker, consistent.
Yeah, I mean, there have been points when he's been on waivers. He's been thrown out of things, and and he continued. And to think that Patrick Eves is still playing in the NHL is pretty astonishing, right?
Because he'd be like Michael Grabner, yeah.
Well, so many times when he could have. Didn't he start with Detroit?
No, he started with Ottawa.
Ottawa, right? But did he play in Detroit?
He played 5 seasons with Detroit, and then that's I would think one of the basis, one of the reasons why that rumor might make sense. But he's not a center, and the speculation is that the Leafs are looking for a depth center. That's why there's been some tying in with somebody like Brian Boyle, who may or may not be available depending on whether Tampa Bay contends. I have to reiterate, I just don't think the Maple Leafs are in the rental market. A guy like
there's a very strong connection that I can't get into. I'll tell you guys off the air, but that I can't get into with Toronto and Patrick Eves. That would make this a lot more obvious.
I will say this about the Brian Boyle one. Freddie Gauthier has all of the right components to be Brian Boyle. He's just not going to score. Or I should say, have occasional seasons to score like Brian Boyle, but he'll do everything else. So that's why I don't see them getting a player like that because they already have Gauthier.
No, and why? Well, true, but why would you do it if you are truly interested in Brian Boyle? You can sign him in the summer.
Right. He's a fairly inexpensive player, and as is.
Right, but according to all the reports, the Lightning are looking for upwards of a first-round pick.
Yeah, there's no way.
There's not a chance in hell, and I wouldn't give up a second-round pick for Brian Boyle. No. Not a chance.
No.
Right, and we're not going to get into the salacious stuff. People are texting me, "Oh, talk about this." No, we're not going to get into it. We've been through that before. We don't talk about things that aren't like investigations that are going. You guys can find out for yourself. We're not even going to give you hints.
No, thanks.
But there's a couple other things here that I want to get into, and before we get into, I think the two big stories, which is Vermette and of course the Canadiens. But the next thing is another Patrick. Patrick Laine last night. Third hat trick of the year. This is astonishing. 3 goals now behind Crosby for the lead. Just, the most points per game of any rookie. Patrick Laine. Not to say he's of course not going to, and you can conspiracy theories out the wazoo because he's not going to beat Austin Matthews, and I don't think he's a better player than Austin Matthews. But right now, if you were to just say, if you were to take both names away and just look at statistics, it's tough. I mean, but Matthews eventually will, whatever. Matthews is.
You can do that with the numbers, but you all like Russ had said before, you have to factor in position.
Yeah, impact on the game.
Impact, yeah, and the thing is, it's very possible that by the end of the year, the leading rookie scorer in the league could be Mitch Marner. The leading rookie goal scorer could be Patrick Laine, and I still would believe that Austin Matthews is the leading candidate for the Calder because he'll be second or third in scoring, and his impact on the game is just as much or higher than Laine or Marner.
Yeah, but just as much as higher. I mean, isn't a guarantee. Like to me, that's like. I mean, to me, it's not like he is getting every. I have no question that he's going to win it. And I don't even know who I would vote for, to be honest, yet. When I think about it, I think I might vote for him, but I do think that
I would still wait it out. It's going to be a good race.
It's a race, and
Werenski's still in the race too, but he's falling back.
He's going to be the best player. There's no question. I think he's the best player that's going to be down the line. But but as far as just flat out rookie campaigns, this Patrick Laine rookie campaign is astonishing, and it has to be looked at. It has to be considered. I mean, you're talking about. No one's gotten 41 goals. I mean, since Lindros or whatever, Patrick Laine is going to do that as well.
But he's not a center.
Not
No.
a center, right? Which is
That's why I brought that up. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
Go look at the list of centers.
And if and
centers are tough, and
and if we want to be accurate about it, he is actually tied with Matthews in terms of goals. You have to count goals on your own net.
Yes, and of course, I don't know who has more empty netters right now, but the one goal Laine scored last night, the second goal he scored, which was right off the faceoff.
We do have to say this too. Matt Murray is 21-6. He's back in the race too.
Right, and he had another shutout last night. So we talk about bad drafts in the recent years, right, Ross? I mean, like rookies are they're just taking the cake right now, right? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this league is being run by rookies right now.
It is. I mean, we saw it happening in the World Cup. And it happened for a short time, and then I think calls are what derailed the under-23 team, not the actual talent. I think those, what happened in game, it wasn't on them. It was the way things were constructed, I think, is what hurt them. But I could see a time now where there will be a very young team winning a Stanley Cup because of the speed and the youth, the legs, the endurance. It's nice to have the mix. You have to have the mix.
Yeah.
But if you've got 2 to 3 dominant young players, you could do some damage in this league.
Yep. Really quick, a little highlight, guys, for you guys here. This is, I'm sure you guys saw this, but this was one of the more astonishing goals of the year, and I had to throw this out there because, and I would explain why I think it's astonishing. So we're going to watch it here. So then we're going to get on to our big stories, which and we will. I promise you, we will. But this one is okay. So this goal last night is the return of Evgeny Malkin. Okay, so Evgeny Malkin is back, and this play, okay, this on Kessel's goal here, which is like this, and it is hard to explain. Like I wish I had it full speed because in slow motion here it doesn't look as impressive. But in full speed, the thing that's impressive is in full speed, Malkin looks like he's in slow motion on this goal.
Right.
And that's the great thing about it. And you can't really tell because he just literally commands so much respect that neither defender goes anywhere near him. They allow him to stand there, and Miller just desperately comes out on the angle. You can see Miller's pretty far out. He's like, I gotta play the shot, and and then bang.
Well, actually, one played the shot, one played the pass, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter, and they both stood there while Malkin played like he was at open hockey with 10-year-olds. Like he just held the puck. And then passed to Kessel, who had the easiest goal of his life, right? So it's just, we talked about how good of a passer Malkin is the other day and why he belongs on the top 100 list. This goal to me was a perfect example of it. This is such a pro superstar goal.
And Kessel smiled after that goal like there was a 2-for-1 sale on hot dogs.
Oh yeah, no, he was happy. I mean, what the hell? You're playing. And the Malkin. So Kessel goes up to him like he is absolutely thrilled, right? We don't see that in the highlight, but. And Malkin has the like I just managed to make my make my bed without the corners coming up look. Like he had completely didn't care what.
Actually, speaking of Kessels, I think Amanda Kessel had a hat trick in the NWHL All-Star game, which was
well, Kessel's always been 1 away from being awesome, but he's really good, and I think when we look at the whole thing, it's Amanda Kessel, that was something I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool to know. All right, so let's get on with it.
Got to see the game. Apparently, I don't think he got to attend because he was playing, but he did get to see it. So apparently, that was something that made him happy. And it's a hell of a tandem. That family, man.
It's such a great story, and I love the fact that he a couple times has come out and said that he's the brother of Amanda Kessel, which is great. Yeah. And this is the kind of thing that Phil Kessel doesn't get credit for. It's like for all the hell he's put through. He has kind of won the internet in the last year or so. I'll never forget what he did in the NHL finals. That was a moment that I will never forget when he said, "Feel like I should have been doing something important today."
Yeah.
And sitting out there, not during the finals, during the World Cup of Hockey.
Yeah.
And he owned that room of every major reporter in the NHL, just about ready to go talk to a team, and he's sitting there, and oh man, it was fascinating. All right, let's do Vermette. Okay, Antoine Vermette, who and it's funny, just yesterday I was going to bring up on the show, it was in my notes, and we didn't get to it, that he was the #1 faceoff guy in the NHL, which was shocking to me, like 60-some%.
No, every year he's in the top 5. He is.
Yeah. So he obviously takes faceoffs extremely seriously. And oh, by the way, happy birthday to Yager. Yager is 45 today. We have a lot to talk about, but we won't get into that. But we'll talk about that at another point.
45, that's nothing. Come on.
Thank God for Yager, who makes me feel like there's still a player in the NHL that I followed when I was a fan and a kid. You know, that's what I like about Yager. Like when I actually, otherwise I feel like, you know, I'm really old.
You feel like me. I get it. Yeah.
But yeah. For Yager, Yager, you know, played before I was a fan. Before I was a reporter, which is nice. All right, so Vermette, the whole idea is this. So he misses a face-off is dropped. This is a weird thing about this, like a neutral zone face-off, right? It's not even like a crazy important face-off, but there's been something going on the entire game between him and the linesman, and he got thrown out. He was only 30% in that particular game, which is something that is, you know,
yeah, it's unlike him.
It's unlike him. So obviously he's getting more and more frustrated. He feels like the linesman's probably just trying to dupe him and trick him, and then the linesman drops the puck before he's even ready, and he takes a hack at the linesman's back. Now, not in like the, you know, not in the way quite like we saw last year, right? Like, I mean,
see, this is where I disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's my point, and this is what I was trying to. A little echo here. Sorry. This is what I was trying to point out on Twitter to people. I don't care what you think what something looks like with intent. That would be like, hey, Eck, sorry I slashed you on the hand. Didn't mean to break your hamate bone, and that could have happened. It doesn't matter. Right. What looks innocuous sometimes on a video for regular people. This is an athlete who's way stronger than you think, who's mad, who's hitting with more force than you think, and then you could tell in that video. And he did it more than once.
Yeah.
So to me, that's intent to injure. I don't care if he got the job done or not. I think that's what people are looking at. Well, he didn't really hurt him. Oh, he didn't try and hurt him.
No, when you watch it, there's a little bit more than it. This is more than a tap. This is not.
Yes, it is.
Not because it's a two-hand. Like if to me, it's like a tap is like a one-hand thing, but he pulls his hand up and whacks him. I mean, he takes a whack across a part of the body that like is not like it's not a thing to like tap a guy on the butt when you're skating by. Like what happened?
He's slashing the linesman on the trying to slash him on the back of the knee, which is the most vulnerable part of
which is
any player or a referee's leg. The thing is, immediately when I saw this, I thought of the Tom Lysiak suspension back in the 80s, where he tripped over the linesman and he got 20 games. Now apparently. In the CBA, there was 3 categories of suspension, and this one was ruled a category 2, which is a 10-game suspension. I actually got off light. I think I'm surprised he didn't get the 20, but and they're going to.
And here's my feeling about this, Mike.
Yep.
I understand there's something in the CBA, but what the commissioner can do is he could just say he's suspended indefinitely and let him ride out more than 10 games, but less than 20 if he wants, just to make him sweat. And that's what I would have done, because I don't like players doing this. It's bad for the game. It makes the game look bad. I guarantee you this highlight has made it onto a million shows because they always show the negative parts of hockey. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I get that, Russ, but the problem is that the commissioner of the NHL is not Roger Goodell. And Roger Goodell
that's a good thing.
Yeah, because he went extra when the whole Ray Rice situation happened, or not Ray Rice, but the Tom Brady situation. He didn't do it for Ray Rice, which was an embarrassment. But that and that raised a complete kerfuffle with the NFL, because it was there was really no basis for him to do that. The penalty for the Deflategate thing, I think, was a $25,000 fine, and he suspended him for 4 games and penalized him a first-round pick. So I think Bettman, even if he wanted to suspend Vermette or penalize him more, he's locked into the CBA, and unless you want to start something with Donald Fear, you're going to stick to what you have in terms of a penalty.
Right. I think it's fine. I mean, I think it is. I think it's the right. I think it's 10 games. I think that the refs have to be off, completely off, off whatever you would call it, out of bounds. They have to be. This has to be something that you can't do no matter what.
And what was Randy Carlisle's quote about it? Do we know?
No, I saw the quote about it. It was interesting. He's like, well, he said it was something like, they have their view, we have our view. But are
you kidding? Come on, Randy.
No, but he finished it up, but he slashed the ref, so what are you going to do? Like, that was how
that's bad.
But Russ, he's going to defend
That is
his
a former.
player.
No, but that's a former player defending a player, and that is
Really
wrong
defending.
take
I
to
think
have.
I think what he's trying to do there is keep it from being. At that point, remember when he's asked that comment, he's trying to keep it from being 20 games. I think what he's saying is like he's trying to say like the obvious attempt to injure a guy, right? Which is
Well, actually, I disagree. I think he could have had it be less games if he said, you know what, we're going to talk about this. I didn't like it. That's all he had to say. But he didn't say that. He defended his guy. It's indefensible.
yeah.
No,
I mean,
we believe that, but from his point of view, he's got to maintain team camaraderie and everybody being behind him. And you go out and you say something against Antoine Vermette if you're Randy Carlyle, all you're doing is sowing the seeds of dissension in your team.
Actually, I disagree. And I bet you if it was Mike Babcock, he would have actually said what happened and said, yeah, I don't like it. I guarantee you.
Well, Mike Babcock is in a much safer.
Oh, whatever. But I'm just saying, I think he would have said that.
Yeah, perhaps. I think or not say anything at all, right? I mean, that's the other thing you can do is
you could choose no comment. That's fine.
no comment. No comment is a comment, of course. So
or you could say I didn't see the replay and then just hope it goes by.
You could do that too.
Yeah, you could say I have to look at. That's the big thing.
But there is no backing the player on this. The player was not even close to. There's that's the problem with this one. There is no backing the player on this.
All right, so let's move on to Michel Therrien, okay? Because
all right,
the last couple of days I sat here proudly and said, after all this time, you guys know I've been a Therrien backer the entire time, and I was
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you were right in his corner.
I've always been there for him. Never doubting him, never
Brutus?
him. I've written. I know Mike just laughed himself off the air for a second there.
He did.
Is your middle name Brutus?
I know. So, I've written articles about why Therrien was successful despite himself. So, that's where I'm at, right? So, but I was still told, like everybody else was, we were given the old vote of confidence,
But nobody fully believed that either.
Kellyanne Conway vote of confidence, I'm going to call it from now on.
Okay.
And I was given that vote of confidence and that, that he was going to stick around for a while. And yet, yesterday at 4:30, getting ready to go to a Valentine's Day dinner with my wife, Michel Therrien gets fired. And my wife gets food poisoning and the rest is history. So, no,
that's Therrien's revenge, I suppose.
Right. I don't call it Therrien's revenge. This apparently, now we're, I did get somebody who I know watches the show who was wanting me to point out that he told me on Sunday that to look out because he didn't tell me why, because he couldn't tell me that they had asked for permission to talk to Julian. But we've heard it so many times, right? That, so it's hard to sit back with Therrien and say, okay, out of Montreal, and I'm not one, also I have this thing about not reporting rumors of coaches getting fired. So right. I sat there and I was just basically told that they were going to do something else. I think that would have been the case if Claude Julien wasn't available. I think they would. I think Therrien would still be the coach. I think. Well,
supposedly, they did ask for permission on Gerard Gallant as well. I've seen reporting on that. So
okay, and that would have been interesting because Gallant was an assistant there, right? So,
yep.
But here's the thing. One day when you weren't on, I guess it was Friday. Mike and I were talking about because I had read some rumors that there was locker room dissension. The Carey Price thing being the only thing that we saw with our own eyes, with the stare down. And so, like, when you said something was going to happen with players, that's why I didn't think so. But once I started seeing that report, we did say that day, it does look like Therrien's in a little bit of trouble here. And
the famous Carey Price stare down.
Yeah. And so we did talk about Therrien being in trouble at that point. And that's why I'm not shocked that Therrien got fired. What I'm shocked at is that the Boston Bruins allowed the Montreal Canadiens to talk to him and to hire him. They were in control of this, and they decided, hey, we'll lose the salary on Julien, and we'll let him talk to Montreal. This could cost them a championship.
And then you're absolutely right. And the thing is, so everyone's giving the excuse that this is because of money, right? Okay, so you're going to let them talk. You're going to sit there. You're going to let Julien talk to Canadians because if the Canadians hire him, you're off the hook for about $3.5 million, right?
Right.
$800,000 this year, whatever, and next year's contract. So I'm telling you, this is not about money. It's not. It's not. And this is the thing you have to realize about this Boston group. that is so obvious at this point. They were against. They did not like Julian. They want him away from them. I really believe. I think they're happy moving him on. I don't think they want him. I think they are. And I will say that there's a cockiness / arrogance about this Boston group that it doesn't matter if he goes to Montreal. I think that to that. And remember that Chiarelli and Julian, they really put them in the same boat, and they had to keep Julian around longer than they really wanted to. And to them, this is just puts in that, okay, let's just get him away from us. I really think that plays into it.
In a sense, it almost makes it easier for them to demonize him because now he's the enemy. Now he's in Montreal.
I don't think.
Sure, I get that, but you know what? Pay him the rest this year and let him talk to anybody he wants to over the summer when it can't hurt you.
No, I totally agree with that. But I think most teams would have done that. I do. There have been teams that have been coaches that have been fired before that have not been allowed to negotiate with your enemy. I
understand the move on the part of Montreal. You know, maybe
yes.
Therrien's method. You know, it has a short lifespan. He alienates players after a while, and you know, once that happens, there's no turning back. You know, like Russ was saying, you know, obviously there was some thing there with him and Price. There may have been things,
and him and another player too.
Yeah, with possibly with Pacioretty, because I rember I guess there was some comments over the summer about his leadership abilities.
Right.
So and you know, and in a way, I think that the relationship between Therrien and Subban forced that trade.
Yeah, that's beyond true. Yeah.
Now, the thing is that, and it was said in the press conference, I only saw this up because of reportage from the press conference, was the fact that. Well, was the fact that, you know, this was not an ownership decision. This was not Jeff Molson going to Bergevin and saying you got to get rid of him. That Bergevin took the responsibility of making the change on himself. To me, that means Bergevin is the next head on the chopping block. And if he's making this move because he doesn't want to make trades, then this
changes the trades. I don't think it does. I talked to people and I said, because I asked the question too. And by the way, that would be that repertoire would be hackneyed at best, because we've been down this road before, right? And it's like, so I just think, just to try to match your vocabulary for a second.
Oh, thank you.
It's always impressive. All right, so no,
he already fleed you off. You can't match that.
It is. No. So no, I think that it's good that we bring good vocabulary into such battle.
Look at all the books Mike has. Come on.
Yeah, I know. I've read every single one of them. But the thing is,
all right, wait. All right, there is something that went down a couple weeks ago. The whole meeting in Phoenix, the Phoenix thing that went down. It was like maybe even a week ago, right? And this was very players meeting, and there's a couple of players meetings that are in the news too right now, which is really funny. We can't even get into the Tortorella one. That's like a whole nother can of worms. But all right, but there was one in Montreal. Montreal players are in Arizona, right? They want to hold a player meeting with Therrien. Therrien sends Bergeron instead, and doesn't go to the player meeting. This goes back to and they want to talk about Therrien. I mean, that's the whole idea of it. So they get to the meeting, and everybody's uncomfortable. Like, well, you know, we want to talk to Therrien, so I guess we'll have to tell you what we feel. And they talk to Bergeron, and you know, that had to be one of the problem things. And but for this is where I want to bring this up. I brought the story up before, and I wrote about it today, but it bears mentioning here on the podcast because I want everybody to hear this. The way these exit meetings were held every year with the Montreal Canadiens, and I've heard this from 4 players, 2 of which are no longer there, one of who may have been traded to Nashville, that this was the way these meetings were held, okay, at the end of the year was you would sit across the table from Bergeron. And normally how these exit meetings go is you're there with the coach, and maybe the GM's there, but not always. Usually it's just the coach. The way Montreal exit meetings worked is you sat across from the GM, and the coach would be in the corner, like literally 10 feet away from you, facing the window, looking at his computer or his iPad, and would as you were talking to the GM about what happened throughout the year, what you need to work on in the summer and all that stuff, the coach, Michel Therrien, would chime in as if you weren't there by saying something to Bergeron in French, or whatever, saying, remind him about this. And as if he wasn't talking to you directly.
But you know, this happens.
That's
in the
insane.
corporate-
And then him not showing up for his own meeting.
That's weird because I mean there's been some reporting out there that Bergevin called the meeting and Therrien was not invited to the meeting. So if that's the case, then the writing was on the wall. If it's the other way around,
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Players I talked to, I don't think that's
But
true.
here's the thing. I've been in exit interviews because I've been in management. I've hired and fired people. And I've been in the HR office and had to listen to people say things on the way out too. And that is like what happens in the corporate world. So I'm not totally shocked.
Yeah, but in the hockey world, I mean, it's a whole different can of worms. And what it gives you is like this sense of separation between the player and the coach, which Therrien thrived on, and he thrived on the fact that his players, didn't like him. He made them hate him. That was his MO, like to get your team to hate you. And that's a tactic that people have used throughout the years, and you know what, it really is a high school type tactic in a lot of ways.
And it's got a limited lifespan. You can only do that for so long. Now the funny thing is apparently Brendan Gallagher had contacted, I think it was Milan Lucic. I guess they're friendly, which is strange because those are but he had contacted him about Julian on yesterday morning, so it was known that this change was going to happen way before it got released.
And it was I think it was known in the core group there that they have, which is different than the core group, because the Bergeron core group, okay, or Bergevin. I'm sorry, Bergevin. I always call him Bergeron. I apologize. The Bergevin core group, okay, is different than the Therrien core group.
Right.
What I've been told, like Therrien there are Therrien supporters in that room. There are guys who are, they're not as many as there were, but there are still like 3 or 4 guys left from the year that they went pretty far in the finals, in the playoffs a couple years ago, who are Therrien backers. But they are not the same people that are in the Bergevin core group, and that when that happens too, that you've got a problem. Like,
well, here's something. Here's something that's is pretty interesting. I think Julian is a better coach than Therrien. I think he's better.
I don't think anybody would argue on that.
Better at interpersonal relations than within the team than Therrien is. But he also is in terms of his style, is a defensive coach who believes in two-way hockey. Players like Alex Galchenyuk, who's been sort of the center of the recent situation in Montreal about him being not responsible defensively. You got to remember, Claude Julien moved Tyler Seguin to the wing because he wasn't good defensively up the middle. This isn't going to change the whole situation with Galchenyuk if he continues to play haphazardly defensively.
This is the difference. You're right about that, Mike, but here's the difference. Therrien never gives any positive. Therrien's also a defensive coach. Therrien's also very much, he gets, the reason that some players have struggled there is because, and Bergevin has brought them in to play offense, and Therrien won't let them do that. Therrien says, if you're not playing on defense, you're not playing at all. So you had these guys, and Therrien never rewards guys for doing well. Like where Julian, does want you to play well defensively, but if you're going to go out there, if you go out there and score goals, if you're not playing well defensively, you damn well better score goals. And if you score goals, okay, we won't talk about your defensive game today. That's more the Julian tactic. Where where Therrien's like, it doesn't matter if you go out there and score goals. If you didn't play well defensively, you're done. And that is where he kicked.
There's a couple things. Like last year, I saw the definite at the Winter Classic being in the room for 2 or 3 times after practices and whatever, that there was a bit of an issue, but they weren't going to make the playoffs, so it rolled onto this year. They started out hot, but when he started making excuses after the Winter Classic, I knew there was a bit of an issue. It lasted until this year.
That's his game, right? His game has always been excuses.
Right. And so, but there was on display there. Like,
yeah,
it was on display for the wall.
Yeah, and that's hard. You know what the difference is there? Because you have a national media there at the Winter Classic, right?
Correct.
And he has the Canadian media. The Canadians are very good at keeping their media at bay because they have so many people that want to be in that press box that if you're not in line with them, like I've often said, if I was a Canadian writer, I wouldn't be in the press box because of all the things I've said about Therrien. There's no question about it, So, I mean, but I've said some things about the Flyers in the past, and they've been fine with me being in the press box. They understand that that's part of my job.
Different organizations, different people.
Right, but in Montreal, there's no organization that's harder than this one, right? And I've seen it, and it's funny because we saw it with Eric Engels at times early on, and then now he's with Sportsnet, so he's sort of stuck where they have to put him in there now because he's with Sportsnet. But believe me, they didn't want him in there because even though he was in there for a while with XM with us, and they didn't want him in there because he was critical. And when you're critical at all, you get stymied right away. And man, that this organization especially, they had their friends, they had their certain guys, that they liked. Therrien had his guys he would call on in press conferences. It was just like what you're seeing, in Washington D.C. right now. But I'm just saying that there was a whole thing where you had this whole thing going on, and players really got frustrated by it. And the lack of respect he showed for a lot of players who deserved respect was another thing that went against the hockey culture, in a big way. And
the second part of this is, I think this is Bergevin's going all in, not going all in on a trade, but going all in on a coach.
Yeah, it is.
And now they're going to wait. They're going to evaluate before they make a trade. I do.
And that's where I think that there's a potential pitfall for Bergevin, because if he says, okay, I'm not going to make the moves that I was going to have to make before because there's going to be a new outlook from Julien, and maybe he can get more out of Galchenyuk, and maybe he can get more out of this guy or that guy, and they go past March the 1st, and they fall in the first round, then Bergevin's in trouble.
I don't think they'll go past March 1st, but they did buy themselves a little time here because they had practice time that you don't normally have, and
they have like 5 games or so left, right?
Well, I mean, the one good thing is Julien has a knowledge base of the Canadians because he's faced them the last decade.
Yes.
So it's not going to take him a long time to get up to speed. But you also have to recognize there are certain problems with that team that need to be rectified. They need more scoring. They maybe need some size up the middle. That hasn't changed because David Desharnais isn't all of a sudden going to become 6 inches bigger because Claude Julien's the coach.
No, but like Nathan Below could have a bigger role. Like there's other things that could happen that could make them better. Even if he puts Galchenyuk on the wing just to see, he might start scoring more because he has less defensive responsibility. Like there's definitely things.
Just clearing off all this baggage. I mean, there's so much baggage that Therrien had on these guys.
Yes.
I mean, just I would hear guys talk about going to practice, just like, okay, I turned right instead of left. I know Terrien's going to say that I turned right instead of left. Like everything was being so completely, micromanaged.
And this probably affected Carey Price for the first time.
Oh, I think it totally affected Carey Price. And I know it affected Galchenyuk. I know it affected, like PK before that.
Definitely PK. I mean,
oddly enough, Pacioretty was one of Therrien's supporters. He was in that group of, he was in that group. And, but I think part of that, and that's partly why, you're looking at him with a C on his shirt. But Pacioretty is going to be a great player with anybody, and it might just be the fact that he believes in supporting the coach no matter what. But he was definitely one of the guys that's tried the hardest to sell the system to the other players that Therrien was preaching. But it got hard for him too, and that baggage that comes with him too of like it's hard to keep telling the players to follow a guy that keeps pissing them off, that keeps dissing them at every turn, and that happens. So. I think just the relief of not having that baggage around anymore gets Montreal, into the playoffs and you get a good ending here to the season. I do think
this puts more pressure on the Boston Bruins than ever before.
So much pressure on the Boston Bruins. Yeah, I mean, this is a management group that I don't know why would do that to themselves. Like that's the one thing when I talk about Julien. Like I agree with you 100%. Why would they? Take a situation that already has the whole city divided. And now put yourselves in a position to fail. I mean, give them credit. Whatever, they're living by the sword or dying by the sword. They're saying what they believe that Julien's not a good coach, and they're going to go off that. And they're that they're going to move him to Montreal.
I don't think they're saying that Julien's not a good coach. I think they're just saying after 10 years, his time has passed. I mean, Montreal's made their commitment here. They've apparently the contract is this year plus 5 more years, and the figure I think Russ, you said it was for over $4 million.
Yeah, I saw 4.1.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking, that Montreal has made the commitment to Julian, and we'll see what happens.
I think what we've seen, with the other teams that have changed coaches is you do get a nice little bump, right? You get that, and you're going to see that in Montreal for sure. And Montreal, if this Canadiens team is nothing if not streaky.
Yep.
And I believe part of the reason, and I talked to a player who didn't disagree with this. He was like, he didn't disagree with it completely. But the reason that this team has come out for 2 years in a row now, like gangbusters, is because Therrien's effect is cumulative over the year, and it starts to wear on you. Like you come out at the beginning of the year, and he's nice, and he's complimentary, or he's not completely criticizing everything you're doing. And then, but over time, the criticism comes out. You start to second guess yourself, and we've seen this pattern of the Canadiens having these great starts and then falling apart. This will stop the falling apart part of things, that was happening. Not that the Canadiens were going to fall out of the playoffs, but it was possible. I mean, it was possible that they could have another collapse like they did last year. I mean, they had that great start. They're 500 since then. So it's not like last year where they had the great start and they were like 20 games under 500.
Right.
But this is completely. But I think this will give them a boost. I do think that you will see, where maybe Bergevin would have made a trade this week. Now he doesn't make it for another couple weeks, but I don't think it's going to stop him from making a trade. If he can get Duchesne still, he's going to get Duchesne. If he can go out and get Patrick Sharp, he's going to still do that, because Montreal still believes that they are a Stanley Cup contender, and they should. They're first place in their division, right? So they should think of that.
Now, there was something, rumor-based, that came up during the Islanders-Leafs game. They did question the panel in between periods. What is the percentage chance you think John Tavares will be a Leaf? And I got to say, I wasn't comfortable with that, going around a panel giving percentages on that. I didn't really like that very much. Yeah. And I saw Mackenzie gave 20, and that's the one that I would trust on the panel. I think Jeff O'Neill gave 40, which I just thought was like, come on.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But again, I just thought it was weird that
it's a strange thing to do right now. And
here's my answer. 0.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say 0 because that's the easy way to go, right? And
it's based on the fact that right now the Leafs, and not to say that they couldn't. Obviously, they could use John Tavares. He's one of the best players in the league, but they're going to be paying Matthews big money. They've got Kadri locked up for 4 years. They're going to move Nylander to center. They're relatively they would have to spend $11 million probably in free agency to sign Tavares. They're going to need that money to spend on defense, to spend on a scoring winger for Matthews. You can spend your money much better if you're the Leafs than Tavares. Now, if it was Stamkos and last year, I think that they would have done it, and maybe that wouldn't have turned out well.
I think it would have been a good thing, right? Because I mean, I think Tavares is a better pickup than Stamkos. I mean, I think he's a much better pickup than Stamkos.
Maybe because of the injury history, I might be with
the injury history, yeah, and because I think that he gives you a little more size than Stamkos. This just goes back to the old thing where the Leafs and a lot of the media there always believe they're going to get the next big star no matter what. Yeah,
they've got the next big star. His name is Austin Matthews.
Right, but they still want to get the next big star in free agency too.
And the fact that they have the money, they will spend. They will go out and they will sign a couple big free agents. You'll see that happen.
Well, Russ, what this is, and I being someone who's covered the Leafs for a long time, and before that being a fan and noting how the media reports on them, this is feeding the beast. You've got Sportsnet saying that there's a possibility they're going to trade for Shattenkirk. You got TSN saying that there's a possibility they're going to sign Tavares. They need ratings. They're going to say this stuff. They're going to tantalize.
I don't mind that they even said it. I was uncomfortable with the percentages. That's where
it's strange because of two things. One thing is and even trying to come up with a percentage. First of all, I will never say you can never say 0% on anything. That I've learned. Right. Crosby is 0% being traded to the Flyers. Okay, we could say, okay, that is pretty good bet, but there's even that, to sit there and say zero,
even that when he's 38 years old, you never know.
Right. I mean, look, Lindros was a Ranger eventually.
Right.
I mean, there are things that happen, right? So it's like there's things that happen. And by the way, there's a Lindros auction going on too, which is a whole other thing you have to check out on Classic.
They're auctioning Eric Lindros?
Lindros is auctioning off most of his stuff, crazy jerseys and stuff like that. So
are they auctioning off his Quebec Nordique jersey that he never wore?
No,
he wouldn't. They probably never gave it to him.
No, I don't think they ever did. So but there's a lot. So that's classicauctions.com.
Actually, I think that's in the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken.
That
Oh,
Northeast Jersey, it might be. So anyway, I just think that there's 2% because it's hard to come up with a percentage when, first of all, Tavares can still be signed by the Islanders. So it's
Right.
Right.
so there's a you have to go on what percentage is it that he's going to leave the Islanders is a one thing, and I think that percentage is no more than 20 at tops. And then after that, you got to take all the teams in the NHL now that can get a shot at him. So if I'm going to do the percentage, I would put it in the tens, like if any, like and that's if I said 10%, that means I think there's a 50% chance he's going to be signed by the Leafs because I only think there's a 20% chance he's not going to be signed by the Islanders. So
TSN jumped. TSN jumped the gun on this question.
Well, it isn't. Someone's going to jump the gun on it.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like this said, for conversation. Hey, we've had the conversation. Sure. I just wouldn't put a percentage on it. That's all.
Putting percentages on it is, and I think for anybody to go above 5% is insane if you're really going to do it because you really have to look at it from the fact that there's two factors in this. It's not just he's not a free agent, and it's not like the Leafs are the only team that can sign him. So
right. But it was a Leaf game, and it was against the Islanders. So that, wait until
very Maple Leaf centric. Although I will say, the one thing I've noticed is that yes, they do think they're the center of the hockey universe, but having done the trade deadline show at Sportsnet and stuff, and been part of that machine a couple times, I've been at XM and stuff like that. There is an abnormal hatred of the Maple Leafs among the Toronto national media.
Right, but they also need to drive the engine. They also need to.
Well, yeah, but remember the Toronto media, Canadian media. I mean, the Maple Leafs are huge throughout Canada. It's not just in Toronto. So
and that's why I think the Leafs are included in rumors that they probably are not even involved in because on the part of agents and on the part of teams they can drive traffic or drive interest on Toronto.
Probably true. All right, we got to get going. We have some big games coming up tonight. Again, Toronto's got Columbus tonight. That's going to be a fun one to watch. See how they rebound from that. With Columbus, who recently told their coach Tortorella that it's got to be nicer. That in a team meeting, that is something else. That
the one thing I'll tell you about John Tortorella team meetings, I've never interviewed guys on what they said in the team meeting, but I've been to games like after that, and you always get the impression that John is not happy that they did it.
Oh, you think? Yeah. Yeah.
No, but I mean, some coaches don't mind. Like some coaches say, "Go ahead, go have that." But like with Tortorella, I've never gotten the impression that he feels that that's a good thing.
Yeah, he's not going to be the guy you're going to hold an intervention for. Like you're not going to be there and say, "This is the John Tortorella intervention. We think you're not quite as nice as you should be," and that's basically what they did.
Curtis McElhinney will be in goal for the Leafs against the Blue Jackets. They're looking for the revenge factor from him being waived.
There you go.
Are they going to chant Curtis like Eddie?
That's all right. I like it. I like the fact that Babcock.
Is it in Columbus? Did you say
in Columbus?
Yeah, they might chant Curtis. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, the Flyers Flyers are in Calgary. The Flyers have this West Coast trip now. We're talking about this is the season for the Flyers. So this, in my opinion, the next 4 or 5 games.
It feels like it is.
It feels like that. This is either when they're going to totally collapse or save or make a run to get back into this thing. But they have to over the next couple of games in Calgary and Edmonton, Wednesday and Friday. So
I mean, based on Calgary's goaltending lately, they should be able to score a few goals.
Yeah, Neuwirth is the goalie again, which tells you that, again, I think that Neuwirth is the guy deep down.
Neuwirth started the year for Hackstall, so this is not a shock.
But this is starting to spell like the end of basically Mason's career as a Flyer. Like you're starting, because we're looking at a UFA, and unless Neuwirth gets hurt here, he might not get another shot to be the starter. At which case, we're definitely turning away from him. And I don't think they're going to re-sign Neuwirth either. So if you're not going to sign Mason or Neuwirth, then you are.
Well, if they win the Stanley Cup, they'll re-sign Neuwirth.
Well, sure. But, I think that, or they might sign him. But I think that this further enhances my feeling that they really are looking elsewhere. That they're looking at Bishop or somebody else. I mean, not Marc-Andre Fleury, that would never happen. But somebody had said that the other day that would happen, and that will never happen. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, and we'll have a lot more to talk about, I'm sure. But my gosh, how much more can you have to talk about than we had today? Take care, guys. We'll talk soon.